The amp does not give you tone. The fingers do not give you tone. The soul gives you tone. Now, I think this is an important lesson for everybody out there. You know, a lot of people will say tone is in the hands, tone is in the fingers. And, that there is some valid points to that. You know, we could all change amps, from day to day. You could all change guitars. You could all change these strings or whatever outside things you want. And I think one thing is common. All guitar players have hands, right? Now there are those guys that can play with their feet, or maybe they're handicapped, and maybe there's guys that only play with a slide. And there's a lot of different ways to make some amazing sounds out of a guitar. But, a lot of people say tone is in the hands. And, for most of us, we all have hands. Now, some of us have, longer hands. Some of us have shorter hands. Some of us have different vibratos or different things that motivate us. And I would like to think that it is something deeper than just the hands, that it is the true soul of a musician, which gives you your sound. And what is the soul? I mean, it's something that it's very hard to define. I believe every guitarist, every musician has one, and it is the way to define, it is the thing that I believe defines how you sound. And your soul can be shaped through life, through your experiences, through the way that you grew up, through the things that you did as a person. Your soul is shaped by the books you read. The soul is shaped by the records you listened to or didn't listen to. Your soul is shaped by your life's experiences. It's shaped by your parents. It's shaped by your relatives. It's shaped by the people in your family that affected your life. Some may have a very wide vibrato. Some may have a very subtle vibrato. And all of these things can be, the soul, essentially, of the person. We've all had different moments in life. Maybe you've had a moment where you had too much to drink or overindulged in some way. And that would affect your tone because essentially it affected your soul. And that's an important thing to realize, is that maybe it goes beyond the hands. Once we leave this realm, once our soul leaves the realm, the soul leaves first, right? The body eventually decays. The body eventually becomes back of the earth. The body eventually disintegrates or is cremated or any number of things when we are deceased, right? But the soul is the first thing to leave the earthly body. And it is that soul, that drive, that unattainable, unseen thing that is inside each one of us, that gives us our true tone, that gives us our true playing style, and how we shape that soul and and also the people that the generations before us. You know, if you look at somebody like Edward Van Halen, well, obviously he had his father who was a musician, and obviously that helped shape who he was, who the soul of that person was. And you know, you could measure hands. You can measure the size of somebody's hands and the shape of the fingers and the condition of the fingertips and all of those different things. And you could maybe even find somebody who has very similar, almost identical hands. But without that inner light, without that inner spark, you're not going to have Edward Van Halen. There are a few guys on the internet that do a great job of copying Edward Van Halen's parts. But very many are able to really get the soul of what he did. Very few are able to capture the true soul of his playing. And I can hear it. I can hear how close they come, and some come very, very close. It's almost as if they have the same soul, but it's still not the same. No matter what you do, you can't be somebody else. And that is why you must embrace your own soul, your own tone, your own playing style. You must find it. The soul of your playing can be very much inspired by who you listened to, who you copied, who you emulated. And maybe even some outside influences. Maybe you had a roommate that used to listen to something over and over again. Or maybe as a kid, maybe your parents played a certain music in the background and that inspired you as a musician. You know, they often tell you that when you have a small child in the crib, if you put certain types of music on, it will stimulate the brain. And, you know, I have a very, very smart young child. And when she was in the crib and she'd take her little naps and stuff like that, I would put on very quietly in the background, I would put on the classical music radio station and, you know, the violin, you know, all of that stuff. And she is very smart. She is beyond smart for her age. And maybe that played a part. But, you know, I'd hoped that she would gain some musical sophistication. I don't, you know, necessarily want her to become a musician because I know how hard that is. But I know that there is great wisdom in listening to music and having different experiences. And you can't just, you know, eat the same thing every day and expect to be healthy. And the same thing with music. You can shape the soul of your playing by who you listen to. And I would advise somebody that maybe if you only listen to one or two players, and when people hear you play, they hear those two players. Oh, you sound exactly like this person. You sound exactly like that person. You need to diversify who you listen to in order to get away from those influences that are just painfully obvious. If it's painfully obvious who you've been listening to where what you're playing is not really truly a representation of yourself, but a representation of what you heard when you listened to somebody else, kind of like a parrot, the perico, as they say in Spanish. You know, you need to diversify who you listen to. Get a wide swath of influences and mix them up. If you want to have a unique voice on the guitar, this might be the most important thing you're going to hear on this channel. Listen to a lot of different musical styles. Listen to a lot of players. And just because you're a guitar player doesn't mean you can't get something from horn players or piano players or bouzouki or any number of things. You can get inspiration from many different types of music. Maybe find music from another culture that inspires you. And that is where true invention lives. You have to find all these different things and put them together, and then you will find your own voice. You will find your own DNA, your own soul, and you will become a unique player who has a wide set of influences to draw from. The amp doesn't give you tone. Yeah, it can help if you've got a great sounding amp. The fingers do not give you tone, although you can have amazing technique, and you can work on your technique and work on your vibrato and work on all of those things so that you have the sound in your head. But the soul gives you tone. And, I can say this, man. I think as a musician, you're always searching. You're searching for the sound in your head. You're wanting to hear something when you play. When you hear something that you don't like, and you try and correct it and guide your hands and your heart. And your heart tries to guide your hands in the right direction. And so it becomes very obvious that it's not just the amp, it's not just the fingers. There's the heart, there's the soul of a player, and essentially those combined with your influences, and those combined with the mind, the tone that's in your mind that you're always chasing. I don't think, for me personally, I settled on a rig. Later in my time in Nashville, I got to a point where I had my pedal board. It did what I wanted it to do. It sounded great. And I got to a point where I didn't change anything. It was a very small pedal board. I could carry it easily to gigs. And I feel like maybe my journey came to an end as far as chasing tone. I had chased every single tone and modifying tube screamers and Keeley mods and Analog Man mods and all these different King of Tone and Prince of Tone and going down the Klon rabbit hole and all of those different things over the years, trying different things, and coming from a period where there were only a handful of pedals you could even buy to where now there's seemingly infinite option paralysis, even if you don't even have pedals at all, even if you're just using a fractal or a modeler or a quad cortex or whatever, option paralysis can be a very real thing. But none of those things essentially give you your tone. Because tone is something you're chasing in your mind. It's something that's in your heart. And essentially, when you leave this earth, your tone goes with you because it is something that is of the soul.